Slide 48, Lesson 3, Special letters in front of words. The conjunction vav continued. And the conjunction vav means and or but. Now, when we add the and or the vav in front of words, if those words begin with a bait, a mem, or a pay, it is spelt with a shurek. So the vav, it's still the vav, but it's got a dot in the middle there, which means it's got an oo sound. Oo sound. So it changes from a v sound to an oo sound, but it still means and. It's just in front of these three letters: bait, mem, and pay. So if we have the word for king, Malik, mem lamed final kaf, and we add a vav, we get Malik, not the Malik, but Malik. Malik. Vav with a dot in it, which is it's a shurek. So the vav is changing to a vowel sound. That's what the shurek is. It's a vowel. If you remember the vowels, that's one of them, shurek. But whether it's pronounced with a v or an oo sound, it still means and when it's in front of the word. So Malik with a vav in front of it changes to Malik. Just simply because that mem is because that's a mem, it's a oo sound, not a v sound. Let's have a look at another example. So Malik changes to Malik, and a king. King goes to and a king. Paro, Pharaoh, Paro, or Paro, but Pharaoh. We add the vav to it, becomes Pharaoh, Pharaoh, and Pharaoh, or and Pharaoh. It's still the oo sound because it's in front of a pay. And let's have a look at it. Before a vocal shiva, it is spelled with a shurek. A vocal shiva, that's this little two dots underneath the letter. So when we put, if the word has a vocal shiva at the beginning, a vocal shiva just means these two dots under the letter. They just mean it two vertical dots like a colon. It means it just has a very short sound. Very short sound. So here we have the word for books, safarim. And when we add it, we add the vav to it, it becomes usafarim. And books, usafarim. So the vav becomes an oo sound when we put it in front of the noun. When it's in front of a bait, a mem, or a pay, it becomes an oo sound, a shurek. But it also becomes a shurek if it's in front of a letter that starts with a vocal shiva. So sefarim becomes sefarim. Books becomes and books. Likewise, in this example, we have a vocal shiva underneath the first letter. In this case, the letter is a shin in the word Shemuel, which is actually Samuel. Shemuel in Hebrew, Shemuel. We add the vav, and it becomes Ushmuel, or Ushmuel, and Samuel. So the vav means and when added in front of words, but if in front of the bait, the mem, or the pay, it changes from a v sound to an oo sound, but it still means and. and it also changes from a v to an u sound if in front of a word beginning with a vocal shiva. That's these two vertical dots underneath the first letter of the word. The vocal shiva again has a very short e sound. So this is Sepharim or Shemuel. That's got a very short e sound there. So the reason they have all these funny little rules is simply that when you say things, when you run the sentences along, it's easier to say Usapharim than Visapharim. It just means the language has a nice little lilt to it. Slide 49, Lesson 3, Special Letters in Front of Words. The conjunction vav continued. The vav with short vowels and kamets. Now, short vowels are called hatuf vowels. The hatuf, like this one, patach hatuf, and this one, sigol hatuf. They're just a slightly shorter version of the sound for the patach hatuf. So it's just a slightly shorter patach. It's just a instead of a sort of thing. And so it's a much shorter sound instead of a long So before the hatuf vowels, it is spelled with the correspondingly short vowel. So if we have a vav in front of a word beginning with for example, a patach hatuf, then we spell the word with the vav in front of it with a patach. And if it's got a sigol hatuf at the front of the word, then the vav that's put in front of that has a sigol in it. So let's have a look at an example. Here we have the word anashim, which means men, anashim, and it's got a patach hatuf, and we add the vav, we get va anashim. So you see it's taken on the patach of the patach hatuf under the first letter. Now, you don't need to memorize this. This is just for your own enlightenment, just to show you some of the processes. Unless you're actually spelling out words, and you don't need to know things to this level, but it's good as a backgrounder just to understand how these vowels change. And there are all these different rules concerning them, but you don't have to memorize this. Just be aware that it's there and know where to look if you want to read up or revise. So anashim with the vav becomes va anashim, and men, and the the patach from the patach hatuf under the first letter is taken and put under the vav. Another example, the word for truth, emet, aleph mem tav. The aleph has a sigol hatuf under it. We add the vav, and we get ve emet. So it's taken the sigol from the sigol hatuf under the first letter, and it becomes and truth, ve emet, ve emet. Now, before monosyllabic words, before some monosyllabic words or words with initial accent, it may be spelled with kamets. So the word zon, we add a vav to it. It becomes va zon. Vatzon. Zon means sheep, and Vatzon means and sheep. Also the word lechem, which means bread, we add the vav to it, and we get va-lechem, va-lechem, and bread, and bread. So again, you don't need to memorize this, just be aware that sometimes the vav can have two dots under it, the short S sound. Sometimes it can have the ptach or the kametz under it, and there are a number of different rules that govern what sound is under the vav. But whenever you have a vav in front of a word, it almost always means and. And it can have an oo sound as well. Slide 50, lesson 3, special letters in front of words, the conjunction vav, summary. So to summarize, we have the vav in front of a word, it means and there's a number of different vowels associated with it, depending on what sort of words it is in front of and the vowels in the first letter of that word. For example, if we put it in front of the word ha'ish, we just have the vav with the vocal shiva under it, two dots here. So it's just v'ha'ish. But if it's in front of a word beginning with the letters bait or bet, mem, or pay or fay, then it changes from a v sound to an u sound, a shurek. So it becomes u malik, for example, if it's in front of the word malik, because the malik begins with a mem. And it also can have an oo sound when in front of a word beginning with a vocal shiva. For example, this word sefarim, books, becomes sefarim, and books, sefarim. Before hatef vowels, that's vowels with the two dots and the kametz or the seagull, etc. in front, it takes on the vowel sound, the lengthened vowel sound. So anashim becomes va anashim. And before monosyllabic words, like the word zon, it's just one syllable, you put the vav in front and it takes on a kametz, and it's just a long ah sound, so it becomes a vadzon, vadzon. So those are the rules regarding the vav, but just be aware that if you've got a vav in front of a word, it just means and. And the Hebrew scriptures have already got all the dots and dashes in it, so you don't need to worry about whether it has a how to put these words together. You just have to know how to read them. You just have to be able to read Malik and know that it means and aking, and it's an u sound as opposed to a vav. So now you know that the sounds change depending on what sort of words they're in front of, but it all means and sometimes it's translated but. Well done. It's time to have a cool, refreshing break. You deserve it. Lesson 3 will continue after the break, and we'll look at prepositions and other letters that are in front of words. But for now, put your feet up, relax, and unwind.